Hey, what is up, everybody? Michael Crump back here again, bringing you the latest and the greatest in PlayStation 4 homebrew news and much, much more. So, today I want to revisit a video that I created a couple of days ago, and that video was all about how to create a PlayStation Vita dock. Since I've made that video, there is a couple of things that I've discovered that I thought would be worth mentioning here on the channel to hopefully provide further information on how to take advantage of your Vita dock, but also just a few general tips and tricks when using your Vita dock. And so before we get started today, this video is primarily for those that have already created a Vita dock and want to get just a little bit more out of it. Let's go ahead and let's jump into tip number one. Okay, so the very first tip is going to be all about the external power source. So in the video, I showed you this diagram, which has the Vita as well as the Raspberry Pi and some of the accessories that you need in order to make this work. One thing that I mentioned was that the Raspberry Pi, regardless of what model that you have, is going to need a good solid external power source. I originally put this in my PlayStation 3, and obviously that was not a great way to power the Raspberry Pi. Now, I did mention that you would probably be in better shape if you plug this into some sort of a wall outlet. I didn't specify which one, so I'm going to specify one now. Basically, it's going to be any USB charger that's at least 5 watts. So this is one that Amazon offers. I do find that this is a little bit more expensive than what I would probably recommend, but you can find some other knockoffs and other brands of this. But you simply are going to want to have a good solid USB adapter. And the reason that I'm recommending 5 watts is simply because you want to be able to not only power the Raspberry Pi, but also charge your PlayStation Vita while it's connected. Another option, which is the one that I'm actually using right now, is that for the most part, most of your televisions already have an ability to plug in USB devices, especially if you're using TVs that came out within the last couple of years. So if we take this image right here, which is the back of a television, and let's zoom in a little bit, here is a couple of the USB ends on this television. So you could obviously take one of these and you can plug it in, and that should be at least significant enough to keep the power for the Raspberry Pi, and then maybe a little bit of a trickle charging for your PlayStation Vita. Now, on my Vita, it does not show that it's actually charging when I use one of these USB ports, but it is charging just very slowly. Again, if you want something just very simple, it's probably always going to be best to just get some sort of USB AC adapter similar to this one right here, but just make sure that it's at least 5 volts. The second tip that I have to offer here is all about the DualShock 4 wireless controller. So there has been a couple of questions that have come up that have been, how exactly does the DualShock 4 wireless controller work when you have certain type of apps or games that is required to use the touchscreen? And as you can see right here on my PlayStation Vita, since I am holding it right now, there is a ton of different touchscreen functionalities that you can use. And then there are some specific games, such as Killzone Mercenary, that really takes advantage of the touchscreen. And so inside of this game, especially when you're going into the multiplayer, there is a couple of sections, such as this one right here, where you can't actually press any of the typical PlayStation buttons like X or circle or square or triangle in order to make a selection here. You actually have to tap on the screen itself in order to make a selection. So if you are controlling this with your DualShock 4, then the touchpad right here on the DualShock 4 mimics the controls that's on the touchscreen on your PlayStation Vita. So heading back to that existing screen that I was on, I would just use this as my touchpad, and I would be able to select either option in order to go forward. And tip number 3 is about which Bluetooth USB dongle that I purchased. This one right here that says last purchase date is the one that I am using with my Vita Dock. So I am plugging this directly into my Raspberry Pi. And so this brand right here, you can see it's got a little over 17,000 ratings. Primarily, the reason I think this one does so well is that it works pretty much flawlessly with all Linux distros, which Raspberry Pi, the image that you put onto that, is a Linux related distro. So this is the one that I purchased if you want to get one exactly like mine. And then again, this is exactly the one that I showed in my original screenshot. And do keep in mind that once you actually purchase that one and you plug it into your Raspberry Pi, you will need to go into the Bluetooth devices as I'm showing right here, and then make sure where it says Vita Dock that you select on that and then you press the connect button. And so just another tip to save your battery, and that is that the DualShock 4 wireless controller, once connected to your Vita, will stay connected. So you'll either want to come in to the settings page right here in the Bluetooth devices and then disconnect it manually, or just go up to where it says Bluetooth feature and then just make sure that that is just unchecked, as mine is right here. That way it will just disconnect from any Bluetooth devices that it's already connected to. Tip number 4 is all about display stands for your Vita. So Sony actually created a official PS Vita Cradle or charging display stand a while back. You can still buy these today, but you are going to be paying a very pretty penny for it. So this one starts around $70. Now, they only made these cradles for the version 1 of the PlayStation Vita. So if you have a PlayStation Vita that is the 2000 model, like the one that I've been using, then this stand isn't for you. But the official stand was actually very nice, as you can tell from some of these pictures here. Again, this is using the proprietary connection that they had with the very first Vita. Here is on the back. You can obviously see they had a couple of well-placed rubber feet in order to keep it connected to your desk or wherever you have it sitting. There was also this little audio jack if you wanted to use an auxiliary 3.5 millimeter cable. But again, this is very much intended for the original PlayStation Vita. Obviously, this is a little bit too expensive for my taste. So what you can do from here is you can look for some alternatives, especially people that have already 3D printed them. So one such example is this one over here, which is actually one of my favorite designs. They 3D printed a Vita charging dock. So it looks pretty cool. I kind of like how PS Vita is kind of edged outwards. And if we go down through this, you can see there's where the charging cable is, as well as there is where the connector is. Just maybe kind of like a little back shot here. And so what you're really paying for here is somebody had access to a 3D printer and they printed them, and now they're just trying to make a little bit of profit back off of it. Primarily, they're probably trying to pay for that 3D printer that they bought. Now, I don't own a 3D printer, which is why I didn't show one of these during my initial video, but I do print some 3D related stuff, such as this ESP32-S2 case through a couple of online providers. And so keep in mind that this case and many other cases, which is available over here on STL Base. And so if you don't know, if you're wanting to 3D print something, STL is one of the formats that if you have an STL file, well, you can actually print all kinds of crazy designs. So here is a couple of different designs that people have created. Here is a couple of the different designs, and this one matches up to what we just saw just a moment ago. Now, for the most part, you can download these files all day long for free as long as the original author is giving them away. So here you could come in. If you like this design, you could download it here. You do need to sign in on Pinshape. But once you sign in, you will get an STL file, and then you can download that STL file, and then you can use any sort of distributors in order to print it. And so just keep in mind here that, yeah, there's a bunch of sellers that are selling these charging dock stands, but for the most part, the STL files that they use to print off of are completely free. So if you are fortunate enough that you have a 3D printer or have access to a 3D printer, that you could print this for absolutely no cost. And so I really dislike recommending services to people because I'm afraid that maybe you will get or you will have a bad experience with them. But I used Craftcloud personally in order to print even my ESP32 S2 cases. What's kind of nice about them is that you can get an instant quote where basically you come right in here and now you just drag and drop that STL file and they'll give you a quote for how much it cost in order for them to print it. Now, you can obviously do things like change the different types of materials that's being used to maybe get a cheaper price, or maybe you want this dock to last for a very long time and maybe you want to use some of the best of materials. Again, they're not paying me to say that. I have no affiliation with them, but that's just my honest thoughts on the matter. And then finally, it's still worth going back and mentioning that, yes, there is the PlayStation TV that would play a lot of those Vita games. But there's a couple of reasons why, obviously, I did not prefer to go down this route. So one reason is that, as you can see here, the PlayStation TV, and this one claims that it's never been used, but they're still about $150. Keep in mind that if you buy one of these for the $150, you absolutely need a TV. Versus, at least with the Vita, you can take this around anywhere that you go, and you should be able to enjoy it nonetheless. And then if you do want to output it to your television, well, then you can use your Vita dock, and that's small and compact enough that if you were, traveling maybe for work or for whatever, you could bring that with you with really very little effort. And so another reason that I really like the Vita dock versus the PlayStation TV is that the PlayStation TV is protected by HDCP, which means that the raw HDMI output is copy protected. So you would have to use something such as a splitter or jailbreak the PSTV in order to remove that copyright protection. And so this automatically makes this a lot harder if you wanted to do things such as record your gameplay. So with the Vita dock, we could simply plug it into our capture card and we would be ready to go. With the PlayStation TV, obviously you would have to use some sort of HDMI splitter in order to get a clean signal that you could send out to a capture card. So recording gameplay and especially streaming gameplay, Vita is not one of those platforms that a lot of people are streaming. And I think that's kind of sad because there is an amazing library, especially RPGs, that's out there that they're just waiting for somebody to, show the rest of the world about it. But the PlayStation TV just makes it a little bit more harder. And another reason that you may want to go with the Vita dock over the PSTV is that the PlayStation TV is just not compatible with all of the different games that came out with the PlayStation Vita. So this website right here kind of lists a bunch of the different games and tells you whether or not the game is actually supported. So you can see here there's a yes, then there's a no, there's a couple of yeses here, and then there is a no. And I think we can see this a little bit more clearly if we go ahead and we Control F here and we find in this document how many times it says no. So we can see here there is right around 500 instances of the answer being no, versus if we search for yes, then we can see that there's right around 600. So you're looking right off the bat at about half of the catalog not even being playable on the PlayStation TV. And the last reason here I would just say is that the save game system, you basically would be transferring it back and forth from your Vita to your PlayStation TV if you went the PlayStation TV route, versus if you're using the Vita dock and just your one single PlayStation Vita, the save game and all of that information is just stored on that same system. Whereas again, if you're using the PlayStation TV, and especially your PlayStation Vita on the go, you do have to sync those saves back and forth. Well, I hope this kind of tips and tricks video kind of helped you get just a little bit more out of your PlayStation Vita dock. I want to thank you so very much for watching. And don't forget to like the video, leave me a comment down below, and why not go ahead and subscribe? It's free. All right, I'll talk to you on the next one. Michael, out.